So you want to learn jazz fluency? Well, you're in for it, son. So, first thing you got to realize is composition and improvisation are the exact same process on different time frames. So if you account for relativity, they're literally the exact same process. When we're improvising, we're executing the creative process as quickly as possible, which is real time, right? So when we're composing, we're just retarding that creative process. And in doing that, we see a wider range of potentialities. So as we expand our perception of potentialities, we're informing that real-time decision-making mechanism, and our improvisation can go farther. It can find more directions. You ultimately have more freedom. So that freedom or that fluency is really achieved in the compositional mindset, where you're slowing time down, you're considering a wide range of possibilities, but you are choosing something and moving forward with that. Now, the beautiful thing about improvisation is that analysis paralysis will never apply, because a decision must be made. If a decision isn't made, then you fail. But as long as you're making decisions, well then guess what? You're never failing. Through composition, we can explore a wider range of potentialities to be accessed in improvisation. So now you can see that composition and improvisation exist on a continuum, right? And on that continuum, we find a framework for creation known as jazz. Jazz is the state of mind required to create. When you consider that the great classical composers, I'm talking about Bach, I'm talking about Chopin, I'm talking about Beethoven, Mozart, Liszt, these guys were masterful improvisers, okay? Like the best, even by today's standards, because the scope of their improvisational awareness was like ridiculous, was massive, was potentially infinite. And that's because these guys were writing lines all day, every day. So like it's very intuitive to them to be like, yeah, I can play like anything always. I explored like every possibility of intervals imaginable. Like literally, that's like what Bach probably actually thought when he was alive. He's thinking like, if I want to do the Lord's work, I literally better get all the way in there, man. I gotta turn over every stone. I can't miss a beat, right? So this guy's like systematically checking out like interval combinations. And not only him, all these cats, right? All these cats whose like professional job was to do music, and that's the only thing that they were supposed to be doing. That was their service to society, right? And it was like life or death back then because of like spirituality integrated in that stuff. You know what I'm talking about? It's that spirit of creation. And I think that word jazz is kind of supposed to reference that. And I think improvisation is just a natural byproduct of channeling spirit. So of course, channeling spirit will reach real time, right? But you have to really do a lot of work to get to that point where you can channel, right? And the work is in the compositional mindset. It's when you're thinking about options and you're playing. Sometimes there's like, oh, here's a melody, can I even play this? You know, this kind of stuff. It's a beautiful process, right? Composition is about preparation and practice. Improvisation is about execution and performance. But in order to have a great performance and channel spirit, you gotta lay a ton of infrastructure, right? There's a steep learning curve here. But like, see how jazz fluency is essentially just musical fluency here, right? Because what I'm talking about with this like laying the infrastructure, I'm just talking about like understanding basic principles of music, right? I'm talking about things like voice leading, right? That's like your number one melodic tool. Triads, triad inversions, connecting triad inversions through voice leading, all this kind of stuff. But when you start to understand that stuff, well, what do you think happens? Spirit decides to move through you because it's like, dude, this guy has got all the tools I need to just be like bang, 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 bang. All you can do is set up that infrastructure. But what can happen is your infrastructure can be so comprehensive that it's almost like guaranteed that spirit's gonna show up every time you pick up the instrument. That's where I'm talking about those kind of scarier, bigger frameworks. I'm talking about the T-highs, the special accent T-high framework. I'm talking about the Meshuggah framework. I'm talking about juggling in those frameworks. Cole, you know what I'm talking about. Eric does too. These These guys are literally just playing Meshuggah framework through giant steps as an exercise in compositional awareness expansion. So you see, jazz fluency is musical fluency, and to get to that level of fluency, you're gonna have to work out some lines. You're gonna have to be spending time composing lines through harmony and then using those as practice modules, right? Now, the more systems you have that you can actually run your melodic sensibilities through, right? And what do I mean by melodic sensibilities? I mean like spirit, right? Because you're just setting up these systems, right? Based on form and frameworks within those forms, multiple levels of them. What ends up happening is like every decision is almost made for you. But at the same time, you're still providing the inputs. It's a very strange phenomenon, but you feel that that's really what it feels like to channel. You're just picking the obvious decision every time. And the only thing that makes the decision obvious is that moment in time where it's just like, yeah, of course this is what I'm gonna do. But what's interesting is when we think about jazz and you have jazz musicians playing over multiple choruses of the same form, you know, they're playing a variation on the same harmonic movement. Well, how do they choose whichever one? It's like, they don't even choose. It literally just like comes out, right? They chose when they were working out their lines in composition. They gave themselves a bunch of options, right? But then once that improvisational moment happens, you're not really consciously deciding which of these tools you're gonna use at that moment. It's just gonna flow out like almost entirely impulsively. But because you did that research, because you have conviction in your language, you play with full bore intensity, meaning there's equal conviction in counterpoint and equal conviction in alignment, and both have that deeply woven bombastic impact. I'll show you what I mean. Conviction in counterpoint conviction in alignment. And in this live context, we can see where that fluency compounds, right? If you've done your preparation, you're fluent on your forms that you're playing with your bandmates, they've also done that, compounding, right? This is why that live performance improvisational synergy is one of the rarest, most beautiful phenomenons of all human consciousness. And I think the word jazz really accurately describes what I'm talking about. Now, I've started publishing jazz fluency courses to show you exactly the tools that you need to compose and then turn those composed lines into devastating improvisation. I upload a new jazz fluency course every week, okay? And this is just explaining how to make decisions in a compositional context. At the end of the day, the whole name of the game is you're gonna need to be composing huge lines to get to jazz fluency. The more you pay attention to your composing, the more you escape muscle memory, right? Huge aspect to be unpacked, right? The more you escape muscle memory and the more you access that spirit of creation, that jazz, through your composition, through slowing down time, looking at potentialities, right? The more freedom you have access to in your improvisation. Sharp 5/5, natural fourth in passing, major third, flat 9, but that was 8 subdivisions, and now we're landing on B, which is now the 5th of the key we're in because we just transitioned into E major, right? So that's a beautiful epic lick, very devastating. And guess how we make it more devastating? We just keep going. That, we love that. Those are the kinds of licks you get when you compose. So in the course, you can see I'm just composing and I'm just explaining why I'm making the decisions I'm making. It's all based on really simple music theory, mainly voice leading, mainly triads. We get in some more complex harmonic principles like substitutions. That's what the curriculum is building towards, but we're still kind of on that sort of triadic framework. That whole logic of triads get you 80% of the way there. okay? In terms of your improvisational language, triads cover 80% of what you need. The last 20% are scales, other things, okay? The point is, triads get you really, really, really far from a harmonic perspective. So you can see I'm just stacking that school with game-changing information, right? Like the stuff that you need, seriously, right? And so if you look at it, you're like, wow, that is way too high of a price for me. Well then send me a message on Instagram, okay? And we can talk about how I can get you in at a different price, okay? Right? So that's the thing. The key takeaway is you'll definitely be able to unlock your jazz fluency using those courses in the school, no doubt about it. So congratulations for making it to the end of the video, kid, and I'll see you in the next one.